$1 million mystery starts with 3 pennies. One sold for $467,000, another for $375,000, and the last for $236,000. They don't look valuable. They don't look rare, yet collectors paid a fortune to own them. What hidden detail turned these ordinary Lincoln Wheat pennies into some of the most sought-after coins ever found? The first clue begins right now. Before revealing why this coin reached such an extraordinary level, there is something important to understand. Thousands of people have held a 1945 Lincoln Wheat penny in their hands and never thought twice about it. Most saw a common old cent. Most spent it, stored it away, or left it sitting unnoticed in a jar. Yet hidden among coins that appear almost identical is a version that collectors study with remarkable attention. At first glance, there is nothing dramatic about it. No gold color, no unusual shape, no obvious sign that it could ever be connected to a value of $467,000. And that is exactly what makes this story so fascinating. The first chapter of our journey begins with the 1945 Liberty Lincoln Wheat penny. To the average person, this coin looks like countless other wheat pennies produced during the 1940s. Abraham Lincoln appears on the front, while 2 wheat stalks frame the reverse design. It feels familiar, ordinary, and easy to overlook. But experienced collectors know that some of the most important discoveries begin with coins that seem completely ordinary. The small letter beneath the date is one of the first clues. That tiny S mint mark tells us the coin was struck at the San Francisco Mint during one of the most significant periods in American history. In 1945, World War II was reaching its final chapter. American factories were operating at incredible levels. Military personnel were returning home, and the nation was preparing for a new era. While those events were unfolding, millions of pennies entered circulation and passed through the hands of ordinary Americans. Every 1945 wheat penny survived a remarkable moment in time. Think about where one of these coins may have traveled. It could have passed through a wartime factory cafeteria. It might have been used in a neighborhood grocery store. Perhaps it sat inside a soldier's pocket before eventually finding its way back into circulation. Each surviving example carries a connection to that period, even if its journey can never be fully traced. But history alone does not create a 6-figure coin. This is where collectors begin looking much closer. One detail experienced numismatists notice immediately is strike quality. Many 1945 pennies were produced quickly during a period of heavy demand. As a result, not every coin left the mint with sharp, crisp details. On lower quality examples, Lincoln's hair can appear soft, and the wheat lines on the reverse may lack strong definition. A collector examining a potentially valuable example often starts by studying these areas first. Then comes another factor that can completely change the story: color. Most people do not realize that copper coins are graded not only by condition, but also by their original color. Over decades, copper naturally changes appearance. Some pennies become brown. Others develop a reddish-brown mixture. But the most desirable examples retain a bright, original red color similar to how they looked when they first left the mint. That difference may sound small. In reality, it can mean the difference between a modest collectible and a coin that attracts major auction attention. This is why 2 1945 wheat pennies can look nearly identical to an untrained eye while having dramatically different collector appeal. One might simply be an old penny. The other could become the center of intense bidding among advanced collectors. And collectors are not only looking for condition, they also search for unusual varieties and mint errors. A subtle die crack, repunch detail, striking anomaly, or other production irregularity can transform a routine coin into something far more interesting. Some of these features are so small that they go unnoticed for years before someone recognizes their significance. That possibility keeps collectors searching. Every old penny becomes a question waiting to be answered. Was it struck differently? Did it survive in exceptional condition? Does it possess a characteristic that thousands of others do not? As these questions build, grading becomes increasingly important. Professional grading services evaluate preservation, surface quality, luster, strike sharpness, and overall eye appeal. The highest grades are extraordinarily difficult to achieve because even tiny marks accumulated during decades of storage can lower a coin's rating. This is where the story of the 1945 wheat penny becomes truly remarkable. A top-tier example with extraordinary preservation, exceptional original surfaces, strong strike characteristics, and elite collector quality achieved a stunning value of approximately $406,000. That number surprises many people because the coin itself appears so simple. No diamonds, no precious gemstones, just a 1-cent coin from 1945. Yet collectors understand that rarity is often hidden inside details that most people never notice. The difference between an ordinary example and an elite example can be measured by microscopic characteristics, original mint quality, and decades of preservation. That combination creates the kind of rarity that serious collectors compete fiercely to own. And yet this coin may only be the beginning, because while the 1945 wheat penny hides its secrets in condition, the next coin in our documentary contains a clue that many collectors misidentify completely. Some believe they know what they are seeing, but one overlooked detail changes the entire story. The strange part is that this hidden clue often appears right in front of people's eyes. Why do experienced collectors stop immediately when they notice it? And what makes the next coin even more mysterious than a penny worth $467,000? The answer begins with coin number 2. The most expensive mistakes in coin collecting are not always caused by damage, cleaning, or counterfeit coins. Sometimes they happen because a collector looks at the date, sees nothing unusual, and moves on. That is exactly what makes the 1948 Liberty Lincoln Wheat Penny such an intriguing chapter in this story. At first glance, there seems to be very little to investigate. No mint mark beneath the date, no dramatic design change, no obvious feature demanding attention. In fact, many people would place this coin back into a pile without a second thought. But experienced collectors often become interested when a coin appears too ordinary, because sometimes the biggest clues are hidden in what is not there. The missing mint mark immediately tells an important story. This penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on Lincoln cents during that era. Millions entered circulation, and most lived the typical life of a working coin. They moved through stores, banks, restaurants, and cash registers across post-war America. By 1948, the United States was entering a new chapter. World War II was over, industries were shifting toward peacetime production, and communities were growing rapidly. The coins produced during this period became silent witnesses to that transformation. Yet history alone does not explain why collectors continue searching through old wheat pennies. The mystery begins when attention shifts away from the date. Most people stop their examination here. Collectors usually focus on the year first, but specialists often look elsewhere. They examine Lincoln's cheek, jawline, hair details, and the sharpness of the lettering. Then they turn the coin over and study the wheat stalks. Why? Because this is where ordinary examples begin separating from extraordinary ones. Many surviving 1948 pennies show signs of circulation. Tiny marks, worn surfaces, and fading details are common. Finding one is easy. Finding one that appears almost untouched is an entirely different challenge. The real difference appears when attention shifts to surface quality and luster. A truly exceptional example reflects light differently. The fields appear cleaner. The original mint brilliance remains alive decades after production. The design elements stand out with unusual clarity. To an inexperienced observer, two coins may look nearly identical. To a specialist, they can exist in completely different worlds. This is why authentication and grading play such a critical role. Professional graders do not simply ask whether a coin looks old or attractive. They evaluate strike sharpness, preservation, contact marks, color consistency, eye appeal, and countless tiny details. And here is where another question emerges. If millions were produced, why are elite examples so difficult to find? The answer lies in survival. Very few people in 1948 set aside fresh Lincoln cents expecting future collector demand. Most entered circulation immediately. Every transaction increased the chance of wear, scratches, or damage. Decades later, locating a coin that somehow escaped that process becomes surprisingly difficult. That scarcity creates a fascinating psychological effect among collectors. The hunt becomes part of the attraction. Collectors know they are not merely buying a penny. They are competing for one of the finest survivors from an era that has largely disappeared. The closer a coin comes to its original mint appearance, the more intense the competition becomes. And competition changes everything. Auction records are often driven by collectors who understand how rarely these top-tier examples appear. When a truly remarkable specimen enters the market, Bidders are not comparing it to ordinary wheat pennies found in circulation. They are comparing it to the tiny number of examples that can rival its quality. That distinction is what transforms collector interest into serious demand. And eventually, that demand produced a stunning result. A superbly preserved 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny with exceptional quality, outstanding eye appeal, and elite-grade characteristics reached an astonishing value of approximately $375,000. For a coin that many people would overlook in seconds, the result seems almost unbelievable. Yet despite everything this coin reveals, another example in this collection challenged assumptions in a completely different way. Collectors who consider this the most fascinating coin of the group often change their minds after seeing what comes next. Because the final coin is not defined by what survived, it is defined by a detail so unexpected that many people miss it entirely. And once that detail is recognized, the entire story changes. There is a reason some experienced collectors spend more time looking at a coin surface than its date. That habit seems strange until a coin like the 1949 Liberty Lincoln Wheat Penny enters the conversation. At first, the story appears simple. A wheat penny from 1949. A small D, mint mark indicating production at the Denver Mint. Another old Lincoln cent from the post-war era. On the surface, this appears straightforward. Yet the closer collectors look, the more complicated the story becomes. Because this final coin is not famous for a dramatic design change or an obvious visual feature. Its importance comes from something far more difficult to achieve: survival. To understand why, we have to return to America in 1949. The country was moving forward with remarkable momentum. New neighborhoods were appearing, businesses were expanding, and everyday commerce was thriving. Pennies flowed constantly through the economy. They were exchanged, dropped into cash drawers, carried in pockets, and spent without a second thought. The 1949 wheat penny was one of those working coins. Nobody expected it to become a future collector prize. Nobody carefully protected most of them, and that reality created the challenge that collectors face today. When specialists examine a 1949 cent, they are not simply asking whether it is genuine. They are trying to determine how much of its original character survived. The answer is often disappointing. Many examples show wear. Others have been cleaned. Some have discoloration, scratches, spots, or weakened details from decades of handling. Those coins still tell a story, but they are common stories. Exceptional examples tell another. This is where the investigation becomes interesting. Collectors usually focus on the date first, but specialists often look elsewhere. Their attention moves toward Lincoln's portrait. They examine the sharpness of the hair above the ear. They study the bow tie. They inspect the wheat stalks on the reverse. They evaluate whether the original mint luster still flows across the surface. Every small detail becomes evidence, and every piece of evidence leads to another question. How well was this coin struck? How carefully was it stored? Has the original color survived? Could this be one of the finest examples known? The deeper the examination goes, the more important these questions become. One factor that attracts particular attention is copper color. Many wheat pennies darkened over time. Others developed mixed tones after years of circulation. But when a coin retains strong, original red coloration, decades after leaving the mint, collectors immediately take notice. That preservation is not easy. Copper is highly reactive. Environmental exposure, improper storage, fingerprints, and countless other factors can permanently alter a coin's appearance. This means that truly original examples become increasingly difficult to find as time passes, and that creates demand. Most examples tell one story. Elite examples tell another. An ordinary 1949 penny might pass unnoticed through a collection. A superbly preserved example, however, can stop experienced collectors in their tracks. Authentication becomes critical at this level. Professional grading services evaluate every visible characteristic. Surface preservation, strike quality, luster, color, eye appeal, and overall condition are carefully assessed. Only a tiny number achieve the highest levels of recognition. And that recognition matters, because advanced collectors are often pursuing the very best examples available, not merely another coin from a particular year. When one of those extraordinary survivors appears at auction, attention follows, competition follows, then bidding follows. By the time the most desirable examples reach the market, collectors are no longer competing against ordinary wheat pennies. They are competing against rarity itself. That is the point where value begins to make sense. Not because the coin is made of precious metal, not because it looks dramatically different, but because it represents an incredibly rare level of preservation that time usually destroys. And for a remarkable certified example of the 1949 Liberty Lincoln Wheat Penny, that combination of quality, rarity, and demand helped push its value to approximately $236,000. It is an astonishing result for a 1-cent coin. Yet after examining all three coins in this documentary, a larger pattern begins to emerge. The 1945 revealed how history and condition can transform an ordinary penny. The 1948 showed how overlooked details separate common survivors from exceptional ones. And the 1949 demonstrated that sometimes the greatest rarity is not the coin itself, but the condition in which it survives. Together, these coins remind us of something many people never realize. The most valuable discoveries are often hiding in plain sight, disguised as ordinary objects that millions of people overlook every day. And perhaps that is the real mystery of coin collecting. Not why a penny can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, but how many remarkable stories remain unnoticed until someone decides to look a little closer.